Thank you once again. Moving on to our next panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a Go Green Tech dialogue discussing scaling to sustainable and equitable businesses. To moderate the session, please welcome Dhwani Talati Padiyar, Director, Head of ESG and Sustainability Consultancy, Technical Due Diligence, CBRE. Let's put our hands together for Dhwani Talati Padiyar, our moderator for the session. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause. And also welcome our panelists. Amit, Adarkar, Chief Executive Officer, Ipsos India, Prashant Singh, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer, Blue Planet Environmental Solutions. Let's give them a warm welcome to the stage, please.
This is okay, I'm going to take the podium here. You guys are in the highlight. For those of you who've known me, please take a little sip of water, yawn if you have to, a deep breath. Most usually I blame the IAQ, the CO2 levels in the air. We are all close to sustainability, so please feel free to take the sip of water. We're not going to be offended with the yawn as well. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, to the organizers and the lovely audience here. We're going to be really quick. We've got about 15, 20 minutes, so we'll start with about 2 to 3 minutes of introductions, and then we will jump into a dialogue since we're only a panel of 2, and then we'll pass it on to the audience if there's anything. So we will discuss today an issue that affects every industry and every person, climate change and ESG, with a specific focus on how it affects urban individuals and how do we combat it with actionable concepts such as circularity. This also brings the forte of what our esteemed panels would like to talk about. So the topic today, which is Go Green Tech, we are going to decode it a little differently. Technology as technical and logical solutioning, rather than the digital platforms of carbon calculations and scope 1, 2, 3 and decarbonization. We want to look at technology a little differently, that, like I said, technical and logical solutioning, which have actionable concepts that will actually cater to actions which we relate to as all of us. In this context, so at CBRE, we have integrated these principles at heart of our operations. We understand that real estate is not just about the buildings, it's about the people who live and work in these buildings, the communities they form, and the environment that surrounds them. And hence, we are committed to reducing our carbon footprint and promoting sustainable practices in every project we undertake. Decarbonization is one such potent tool in our arsenal. By reducing carbon emissions in our projects, we directly contribute to the global fight against climate change. In India, this has been the forefront of promoting energy-efficient buildings, green construction practices, various socio-enviro certifications, ESG reportings, and renewable energy sources. Our social strategies to client also touch upon empowering the local communities through education, awareness programs, sustainable practices. We believe that change begins at grassroots levels, and hence we committed to fostering an environmentally conscious mindset for our stakeholders. I'm cutting it short, literally. I do understand the delay that's already happened. So coming straight there, talking about the social aspects of it, it brings me to the conversation actually that I was also having with Amit this morning about how creating awareness amongst urban dwellers is the foremost important action if we want to see a sustained environmental conscious society. So with that, let's dive into the dialogue. Amit, I can pose my first question to you. If you could please begin with a little introduction about yourself, followed by if you can throw some light to the audience on how your research can talk about what the urban citizens perceive sustainability as.
Thanks, Dhwani, and good afternoon, everybody. Now, you might be wondering why somebody who heads a market research company is sitting on this platform and talking about net zero and ESG. I think one of the things we always, not remember is that there's the most important stakeholder in these discussions is people, Obviously, there's a production angle, there's a regulatory angle, there's a lot of financing angle, but finally, it's people who make choices. It's people who decide which car to buy, which shampoo to use, whether to travel or take a train, whether to walk or cycle or to take public transport. And I think our job as a research agency is twofold. One thing is to capture the pulse of people. What do they think? What do they think of sustainability? Does it ring a bell to them? Are they bothered about climate control? Do they actually do any of these practices themselves? So I think one thing is to capture the voice of people. And when I say people, we are not bucketing them by people who buy certain things or do certain things. They're just people who stay in cities, people who migrate, people who stay in villages. So I think that is one perspective. And the second perspective we offer is that we work with a lot of clients, whether it is healthcare, automotive, consumer goods. And whenever clients have initiatives which are green initiatives, we take those initiatives to people and ask them, what do you think of it? Will you buy it? Will you pay extra for it? Will you use it again and again? Will you talk about this to your friends and colleagues and families? So I think for us, we have this unique consumer view, or people view, or citizen view of how people look at this entire area. And Dhwani, I was telling you in the morning that we did one fascinating research just some time ago, where we spoke to people across 28 countries, India being one of them. And we tried to figure out, let's look at climate. Now, obviously, we are experiencing extreme weather nowadays. No, this year is the hottest year. This year we had the 4 months which are the hottest in the history of mankind, at least since the time we started measuring, keeping track of temperature. So in this context, what do people think of climate? How does it affect? So we looked at essentially two areas. One area was questioning people on their concern. Do they know that we have an emergency? Do they know that there's something going wrong? Are they concerned about it? Are they worried about it? Right? And the second part is on action or willingness to action. Are they doing something? Do they want to do something? If yes, what will they do? And what is fascinating is that we found a lot of similarities across the 28 countries. And we found logically a continuum where, overall, if I'm concerned, I take action or I want to take action. If I'm not bothered, I just downplay the problem and say, I'm not bothered. This is all somebody's propaganda. I don't really care. So we found people across the continuum, which is across 28 countries. But what is unique about India, and which is something I want to share with everybody, is that India, we had a significant size of people who we called as busy bystanders. So they are busy and they're bystanders. So they talk a lot, they say they are concerned, but they're not doing a lot about it, right? If I look at, for example, a typical European market, there's a lot of activism, there's a lot of concern, and there's a lot of action. So typically concern and action go hand in hand. India was a bit of an exception where there's a lot of things being talked about in social media, in press, all of that. And thanks to events like that, but people actually are not doing anything. They're saying, right now I'm just, busy getting my next promotion, or, jumping jobs, or, taking vacations, getting married and spending a bomb on weddings. And, I don't want to talk about these things right now. And I think what fascinates me personally, and the kind of work we do, is that unless we listen to this critical stakeholder, look at their concerns, look at what is stopping them, why do they think that it may not be such a big problem? If they think it's a big problem, what stops them from wanting to do something or doing something? So I think those are the areas that we work quite closely with our clients. We also work with governments. We work with a lot of the programs like the Swachh Sarvekshan, the sanitation programs that the government runs. So we work with them trying to figure out, what is the voice of the citizen? Are they happy? Do they want more to come from the government? So I think in a nutshell, that's what Dhwani we do. And maybe later on I can share a bit about what kind of solutions, in our opinion, could make this key stakeholder a bit more open. Because otherwise, you'll have the right kind of financing, you'll have the right kind of production, the right kind of products, but there are no buyers. And for everything, regulation can't be a solution. You can't just mandate and say, you have to do this, because I think I heard in one of the earlier panels, somebody says, sustainability is expensive, which is true. In a country like India, where value matters and affordability matters, they need a strong enough reason to do this. And given that we are already the most populous nation, whatever we do and whatever our population does has impact not only for India, but the entire world. So I think that's my role and our role as Ipsos, to bring the voice of people.
Hold your thought there. We will come back
Sure.
to the solutions again. But in the meantime, Prashant, coming to you, if you could start with introducing a little about what you do, but come back to the busy bystanders and how can we empower our youths or young adults into understanding what are the actions that they could take to be more environmentally conscious?
Sure, sure. Thanks. My name is Prashant. I am the co-founder CEO for a Singapore-based company called Blue Planet. We are the second largest waste management company in Singapore. In India, we are one of the pioneers in the landfill mining space, where we pride ourselves to become the largest landfill mining company in Asia. As far as where we clear the landfills and give the land back to municipality and dispose of the waste sustainably. When we come to fresh waste, we are one of the largest players as far as integrated waste management is concerned. But we don't stop there. I think our biggest supporter is how to engage with youths of future, right? So that's how we build a true circular economy ecosystem for waste management, where you take care of legacy waste, you bring a very robust ecosystem where our vision is zero to landfill. So we deploy a lot of technology driven execution, but we also reach out to youths, kids between 4th, 5th grade, 12th grade, junior college students, and we teach them about behavioral change, waste management, and what role can they play in terms of contributions, right? So that's the AdAct platform. So it's not only education, right? They have to act, go back to their schools, they have to go back to their neighborhoods, societies, collect paper waste, plastic waste, so on and so forth. They bring it back to their schools, which we collect and then upcycle them and donate it back to schools which can't afford them, right? So I think that's what Amit was mentioning in terms of how can we engage with the folks who can do small but incremental changes in their lifestyle, which will eventually help us solve the problem for the circularity which all of us are struggling together.
Right. Let's dig a little deeper on that one. Going back to you, Amit. If you have to cut across demographics, and since that's the research being your forte, if you have to cut it across, talking about Gen Zs or millennials, what are specific strategies, like Prashant mentioned about circularity? Are millennials looking at that more, or Gen Zs should be looking into technology as the platform for educating on sustainability?
Sure, and I think Prashant made a very good point that awareness lies at the heart of it, because many a times the first barrier to many people wanting to act or taking action is awareness. I mean, if you don't know what the problem is, you don't know anything. But I'll go a step beyond that. It's not only awareness; it's also given that India is anyway known to be a frugal culture, as compared to some other developed markets. We do tend to recycle things without, as people, as common people, we never throw things out. Our houses are full of, old bottles and old things that we keep on treasuring. May not be the true spirit of recycling, but at least, our culture tends to be quite frugal. So even sometimes celebrating and rewarding some other patterns, that works quite well. You raise the point of millennials and Gen Z. I think this is also a generation which is critical. Our average age is 28. This is a generation which is going to inherit whatever, the older generation is going to leave as a legacy. And for them, many times, the power of social media is quite careful. So using influencers, using social media to engage with this target audience is also critical. I think one of the things that we've seen is that discussions around, let's say, whether it is climate or net zero, they tend to stick to perhaps more of, English language or business kind of media. It really needs to go where actually the bulk of the stakeholders are lying. So I think celebrating what we do and reaching out far out and using technology to reach out is a good thing. And the last part I want to just talk about is that given that we always tend to be value conscious, how do you make the proposition of net zero or ESG or sustainability as a co-benefit? Because we'll always, I mean, the thing is that we'll always find it expensive to do something which is typically right, which is the agenda that we're talking about. And to that extent, how do you make people see the benefit, not just the long term, but also the short term? Because in general, given the young population that we have, we tend to suffer from what is called as a hyper discounting. So we always look at things which I can do tomorrow, things which I can benefit tomorrow, and I don't really care about what's going to happen after 20 years, because who's seen 20 years? Right now, my priorities are different. So this hyperbolic discounting is something, and typically climate or some of these issues, you'll always say that, yeah, this is going to impact me after 10 years, but today if I can get away without doing anything, why not? So I think to that extent, building a strong benefit into some of these actions can make a big difference. So yeah, awareness, certainly yes. Reaching out to people where they need to be reached, in a language that they need to be reached, and in a format they need to be reached. And finally, having a strong co-benefit of, I'm not buying a product just for the product, but I'm also buying something else. So I think that also, makes a difference.
Very, very valid point. And for that matter, going back to your circularity point, it's not short term. It's not something that can happen tomorrow. It's a long process. And Prashant, if you can break it down for us, how the entire circularity works and which are the interventions where we can make a difference.
Yeah, sure. So see, I think just tagging along, I think what is also important is having a engaged community, right? I think in whatever shape or form and again, we come since today morning, there's been a lot of discussions about reaching out to youths and stuff. So there was a small initiative we did under Blue Planet, which is called Blue Nudge, a small nudge program that we initiated, which was launched by COP26 President Minister Alok Sharma. And within a span of 18 months, we were proud to reach out to 1 million kids in Delhi NCR region. And the output of that was the folks, kids at that young age, they are so engaged, they are so well aware, they are so cautious. But the challenge is there is an intent, but they don't know how. So we need to find a solution of that, how they can contribute, how they can engage, how they can make their living a little bit more worthwhile. Right, so the willingness is very, very much there, and that is the reason these next generation, the questions what they are asking, those are tough one for us to answer. Right, so they are much more aware and taking on how we can make some tangible progress. So we, in that Blue Nudge program, we launched a Guinness Book of Records, which we broke around a month back, where we engaged with 325,000 kids in Delhi NCR region, private school kids who are more aware and who can engage at a different level, and they helped us collect 437,000 kgs of paper waste in 24 hours. And what it did was it created so much awareness, people got engaged, and then the entire waste of 437 tons was given to for further upcycling of paper waste, which it could have been landed in landfills or some other places. So events like this, where we can get community engagements at a younger age, where they can still, the longevity of that impact throughout their lifetime will be really phenomenal to contribute towards circularity out there.
Fantastic, really. I can see the timer go off already, but I have this one last question, and it's a bit of a step aside. If you have to, in a line or so, explain your thought on climate resiliency in terms of people, places, processes, how would you share your thoughts in a way that there's a takeaway for the audience?
I think, there are two dimensions to resiliency. I think one thing is, resiliency requires a critical mass, because, we obviously live in a community, and, you talked about a beautiful example of how you can actually take it to a community. So I think to that extent, it has to be something which can reach out to a widest possible range of population. And the second thing is obviously a sustained effort, because it's not something which is one time, it's something which is going to happen over the long term. And by definition, resiliency is something which requires efforts. If you're expecting miracles to happen, I've lived long enough to understand that there are no miracles in life. I think it will require a sustained effort. And yeah, these two things could be the ones which actually drive us towards that. I think some of the good points about us as a country is that, as I mentioned earlier, we are already known to be value conscious, we are frugal, we are heavily optimistic at this stage. India is one of the few bright sparks right now where population feels positive. And usually, some of the research that we also do is that, when you feel good, about yourself, about your community, about your, society and environment, that positivity rubs onto a lot of things. And I think this is classically, currently what is happening in, let's say, some of the European markets and versus India, where, there's so much of negativity in some of these markets right now for various reasons. So it saps away from that resiliency, and there's a sense of negativity. I think we are the exact opposite. There is a fair amount of positivity. So to that extent, it's a good sort of foundation that we have, thankfully. It's just a question of building onto it a bit more in a sustained way.
Prashant?
Yeah, see, I think for resilience, I would say the biggest advantage we have as a country is hope, right? So from our perspective, I think that if you look at, we were discussing in the morning, like 70% of the infrastructure that buildings we need, they don't exist today, right, in the next 20 years. So just imagine the kind of potential for investment, for job creation, for sustainable development is there. So, and that as a developing country, we are much more hungry as far as, because we are feeling that impact right in front of our eyes. So the next phase of growth, the next phase of climate tech, the sustainable developments, innovations will come from developing world rather than developed world. I'm very, very hopeful of that. And the social unicorns will be the new future that will be looking very, very soon.
Thank you. With that, we might have to close the panel, but if there are any questions before I put in a few words. Anything that you'd like to ask either of the panel members? Of course, we are there beyond this time, so if you'd like to catch up offline as well. Okay, so maybe we should close the panel. I cannot stress enough that it's a collective responsibility. Sustainability is not really the topic that we can go on such conferences, because we cannot even scratch the surface. Even if we go on for a few days of workshops, it's something that we need to collectively work on. And yeah, the panel is here, even offline, so let's do catch up, and I look forward to connecting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a louder round of applause for that very informative discussion. Big thank you to Amit, Adarkar, Mr. Prashant Singh, and of course our moderator, Ms. Padiyar.